Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
People whose homes and belongings were damaged in floodwaters are taking the city to court. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Today, a local law firm announced it is preparing to file a class action lawsuit against the city of San Diego on behalf of the January 22nd flood victims. KPBS reporter Melissa May has more on the legal action and why the lawyers say it's about more than money.
On behalf of the flood victims, attorneys Mike Aguirre and Maria Severson are starting the claims process in order to file a class action lawsuit against the city of San Diego.
The class action allows us to sit down with the city and say, we can give you a release of all of the claims of every single person that's been damaged as a result of this storm water deficiency, and negotiate a settlement with them.
Shane Harris with the People's Association of Justice Advocates says stormwater drainage has been an issue for the city of San Diego for over 25 years.
It could have been prevented. Measures could have been taken to address this, and something could have been done by the city of San Diego to ensure that the creeks were flowing properly.
Severson says their office has helped file claims on behalf of 10 flood victims so far.
It's important that is a process that is a prerequisite to a lawsuit. And it's important that the claims are filled out correctly because you have to not only describe what you've lost, but also your legal theories.
Severson says this lawsuit is going to get flood victims just compensation for their damages.
Under the Constitution, government cannot take your property, can't take your home, can't take your personal things, can't take your furniture unless it pays just compensation. Here, that's what we're going to get these people. We're going to make sure that the city fixes these problems so it doesn't happen again.
But Aguirre says this lawsuit is about more than money.
We are not just suing to get damages for the victims. We are asking a court of law to issue an injunction against the city to require the city to establish a storm water utility. That's what responsible cities do.
Aguirre says a stormwater utility would provide funding for all stormwater-related activities. That includes development and maintenance of channels and drains. Melissa May, KPBS News.
Starting today, businesses hit by the January 22nd storm can apply for emergency grants from the city of San Diego. To qualify, businesses must have 12 or fewer employees, already have a business tax certificate on file, and show proof of how they were impacted by the storm. Most eligible businesses can receive up to $2,500. Businesses and nonprofits in low-income areas can receive up to $5,000. Applications are open until February 27th. And as a reminder, we have links to city and county resources on our website at kpbs.org/weather. Recent rains didn't just impact homes and businesses, it also left some damage on the coastline. Still to come, a timetable for repairs and what it means for beachgoers in the North County.
Well, tonight we're dropping down to a low of 44. Now, we are talking about a few clouds, but overall, that's going to be most of the action that we're dealing with here later on tonight. Now, we are going to be tracking where temperatures go throughout the rest of the week and when we could see our next chance for rain. You're going to want to stay tuned. We have more of your forecast coming up.
Earthquake watchers say the quake swarm in El Centro overnight was far from typical. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says the temblors set off earthquake warning systems 4 times.
The U.S. Geological Survey says the Earth began shaking just after midnight. The largest event measured 4.8 on the Richter scale, and that quake was felt in San Diego.
Between 12:36 and 12:59 a.m., there were 4 activations of the Shake Alert Earthquake Early Warning System, 3 of which there were alerts delivered by several of our alert delivery providers to the public throughout the region, in one case up to 87,000 people.
All told, there were more than 65 quakes or aftershocks stronger than magnitude 2 on the Richter scale. 15 were stronger than magnitude 3, and 2 topped magnitude 4. All were centered in or around El Centro along the Weinert Fault.
I mean, as far as we know, this fault has not ruptured in the historical period, which really only goes back to the late 1800s. We really don't know much before then. But it is well expressed on the lake bed, which means even through the agriculture, which probably means it's ruptured in the last 300 years.
The Weinert Fault is part of the southern San Jacinto Fault system. That system generated a sizable earthquake back in 1987. It measured 6.3 on the Richter scale and injured nearly 100 people in the United States and Mexico. The long, quiet fault runs under a pretty big Imperial County town.
We can clearly see this crossing the desert floor in agricultural areas prior to when they decided to flatten all the fields. So in 1937 air photos, the fault is very, very clear, and it goes straight through the centro, diagonally through El Centro.
The fault line is capable of generating a magnitude 6 earthquake, which can be damaging. Geologists say it's concerning that the seismic activity occurred along a fault that's been relatively quiet for such an extended period of time. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
After a covert operation, Israel says it rescued 2 hostages from southern Gaza. The 2 men had been held for 128 days. While the operation will be celebrated by Israel, significant loss of life has been reported in Gaza after Israeli forces launched overnight strikes. Ivan Rodriguez has more.
A successful operation for Israel in the southern Gaza city of Rafah, with the latest rescue of 2 hostages.
They had been held in an apartment block inside Gaza, where Hamas had been trying to use neighboring areas as human shields. They are home. That's 2 more home, and another 134 to go.
60-year-old Fernando Simon Marman and 70-year-old Louis Har spent more than 4 months in captivity. Now reunited with their families.
Now they are a little thin, a little different.
They lost some weight.
They lost a little weight. They were in a inhuman situation.
The operation to rescue the hostages also resulted in the deaths of more than 100 people, according to the Palestinian Red Crescent Society, after the Israeli Air Force launched airstrikes for aerial cover. There is a growing concern over the operation in Rafah, now home to more than half of Gaza's population, with many displaced from other parts of Gaza and few places left to run.
There is nothing left. They destroyed these areas, as you can see yourself.
In Washington today, a meeting between President Biden and the King of Jordan, coming at a critical time in the war. Both leaders are expected to discuss efforts to support the Palestinian people and a vision for peace. Ivan Rodriguez, KPBS News.
And there were many emotional reunions for families at Naval Air Station North Island today. 800 sailors aboard USNS Mercy are back home after a 4-month deployment. The ship was part of a multinational humanitarian assistance mission in the Indo-Pacific region. Since October, the crew completed over 400 life-changing surgeries as well as numerous construction projects.
We are literally taking people who cannot see and giving them sight. There are people who are going to die if we didn't do anything, and we did. And so you're right, and that is fulfilling for anyone, but especially for medical professionals.
And this was the 19th Pacific Partnership. It's the largest mission of its kind in the region. Other countries involved this year include Germany, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, and Japan.
I'm Amna Nawaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, the latest from Gaza, where Israeli forces rescued 2 hostages in a deadly raid. That's coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
San Diego's District 4, including Encanto, Skyline, and Valencia Park, has some of the worst pavement conditions in the city. But the new pavement plan directs the least money there. KPBS reporter Katie Hyson spoke with frustrated residents.
We have more potholes than you do bullet holes at a shooting range, and it don't seem to bother our elected officials.
Evelyn Smith is one of a half-dozen District 4 residents gathered at Malcolm X Library. Aurora Valdez says the poor streets keep her from getting to class at San Diego State.
I don't have a car right now. It broke down. I'm sure the streets didn't help. But it broke down, and I've been taking the bus, and because of the construction, because of the closed-off streets, sometimes the bus does not come.
Valdez says she has to use scarce food money for Ubers. Rob Campbell says the poor pavement is dangerous.
Everywhere we go, if you try to walk, a sidewalk just suddenly ends and you're dumped into a street, and the street is in such poor shape, kids can't ride their bikes. I can't push a stroller with a kid because the stroller wheels get stuck.
It's dangerous not just for children, but for the neighborhood's many elders and people who use mobility devices, says Andrea Hateru.
Yeah, I saw a friend of my daughter's trip over. His wheelchair tipped over on Montanars, hitting potholes. Actually, I've seen it a couple times.
They report issues through the Get It Done app, as the city encourages, but rarely get a response. And when they do, it's disappointing.
Si hay 5 baches, solamente reparan 2 y dejan 3.
Zamudio says they repair 2 potholes and leave 3 on the same street. Or they close off the streets for a long time, and when they reopen, it seems to be worse.
Right in front of Encanto Elementary, they closed that off, and now there's a huge dip in the road, and cars go on the other side of the street to go around it. This is all day. Everyone's doing it.
Fixing roads is expensive. The worse they are, the more it costs, exponentially. The city's recently released pavement management plan advocates a, quote, best value approach, stretching budget dollars the farthest by improving the streets that aren't as bad. It would get the city's streets to, quote, satisfactory condition overall, but it leaves District 4 behind. It spends the least there, $144 million over 10 years, and the most, almost double that, in wealthier District 5, which currently has the best street conditions. In response to questions, the city said the Streets Division worked with the Department of Race and Equity and factored equity into the scoring.
Now, they've included equity as part of the formula, but somehow, the way the numbers shake out, we always end up at the bottom.
The formula also gives weight to roads that are used more. But Hateru says their roads are used less because the city has underdeveloped their district.
And to me, it's the same game that they've been playing for ever. In one era, it was called desegregation. In another era, it was called affirmative action. Then it became diversity and inclusion. Then it became equity. It's just talk.
District 4, with a high concentration of low incomes and Black and Latino residents, was one of the worst hit by recent floods. The water rose in minutes. But residents say the problem grew from decades of underservice by the city.
It just feels like we're always waiting. And if it's not going to come, then just stop talking about it and just say that you just have, a concentration of poverty, and that's where you put everybody, and then a few people will be able to get out, and that's how the world works. But that's not how I see it. I love this community. When I get off the 805, I always feel like I'm home, that this is home for me.
Young says she doesn't have another 60 years to wait for equity. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
San Diego City Council member Stephen Whitburn is up for re-election this year. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen has more on the race to represent District 3.
District 3 includes downtown, Hillcrest, North Park, and Western Mission Valley. Growth and development are hot topics in the race. At a candidate forum last month, incumbent Stephen Whitburn said the district needs better infrastructure.
Yes, I think that we should have the infrastructure in place before we add density. But I also think we need to keep adding housing and not expect to wait until we have perfect infrastructure, because we're years away from getting there.
Kate Callan is a neighborhood activist and writer. She says District 3 needs more parking and fewer bike lanes, and that growth is happening too fast.
District 3 is suffering from a saturation of density, and we don't have the infrastructure to support it. Our streets are clogged, our air is dirty, it's a mess.
Ellis California Jones is the only Republican candidate in District 3. He says he decided to run after seeing new construction in his neighborhood downtown.
Started calling the city and didn't like the response I got. So I went out and started to speak to other people, and everybody had issues and the communication was broke down.
And Colleen Cusack is an attorney who's represented homeless clients pro bono. She says the city too often criminalizes the homeless just for being poor.
This is unacceptable. We need to allow them to go in this shelter voluntarily, not under threat of police, and we need roofs over them, not tents. Thank you.
The top two finishers in the primary on March 5th will compete in a runoff in November. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
A reminder to check out the KPBS Voter Hub. That is where you will find explainers on local races and Q&As from candidates to help you make an informed decision. Just go to kpbs.org/election. Accessing the beach might be a little more difficult in one part of Encinitas for the time being. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer says a beach parking lot in the south of the city has been temporarily closed due to damage from the recent storms.
After the storms came the sun, and it's shining brightly across much of San Diego. But the last 2 weeks of heavy rains and high surf left some damage on the coastline. Right off Highway 101 here at the Reef parking lot at Cardiff State Beach, the signs of damage are all over, and this area looks very different than it did just a few weeks ago. The weather delivered such a beating that asphalt broke away, turning much of the area into rubble. That led state park officials to temporarily close the lot for repairs.
It just looked like it was like a massive earthquake just happened. It's crazy.
Surf instructor Daniel Bocator has frequented the beach for years.
I think for a lot of the local surfers that come here all the time, you know, they're definitely a bit bummed out. They might have to find a new beach as well.
Kenji Timmerman is another surfer who's been going there for decades. He says the area has been impacted by storms and king tides before, but not like this.
I've never seen it this bad. It's, you know, you go through cycles with El Niños, and some years are better than worse, but this is probably as bad as I've ever seen it.
The damage is also impacting the nearby Pacific Coast Grill. The restaurant had to close part of its outdoor space, says manager Philip Warner.
Here on our beach patio, there's just caution tape because we've lost some of the sand here closest to the water. So it's a little treacherous just to navigate through for diners and surfers and that kind of thing, so just a precaution.
The California Department of Parks and Recreation couldn't do an interview, but they sent us a statement saying they're finalizing plans to fix the parking lot and hope to start work soon. They also said, "We understand how important this beach access is to the community and look forward to completing these repairs as soon as possible." So far, the department says the cost of repairs and a timeline for reopening have not been determined.
With the sand being pushed away by the storms, you know, it just gets a little bit closer.
For those looking to enjoy the beaches in the area, the Cardiff State Beach parking lot to the south remains open. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
Well, let's start you off with your weather headlines. What you need to know as we head throughout the week. Temperatures are going to be staying pretty steady here throughout the middle of the week, though we are tracking a slightly cooler weekend. And that's when our precipitation chances do return again, though the chances for more widespread rain looking to be Sunday or Monday. Let's take a look at what's going on tonight across the region. Oceanside 39, San Diego 44, and Ramona 34. Now, as we head a little bit closer towards the mountains and even the deserts, Borrego Springs dropping down to 39 and Mount Laguna 28. As for Tuesday, those mild conditions stick around. High pressure is still very much our friend. It is large and in charge, and when we don't really have too much to worry about as we head into tomorrow. Where do highs go? Well, we'll see plenty of sunshine. Oceanside, you're at 63. Similar story in San Diego. Ramona 64. Mount Laguna 42. And while Borrego Springs, you're rising to the upper 60s. Let's take a look at the coast. What's going to be happening over these next few days? If we look at your 5-day outlook, Tuesday, again, 63 for the high. You'll have mostly sunny skies. Rinse repeat as we head into Wednesday, 64. Similar story as we head into Thursday. Temperatures do rise slightly towards Friday with a high of 66 with a low of 49. And then by the beginning of the weekend, more clouds will start to make their way on through. Again, as we are talking about a little bit more moisture making its way back into the region as we head into the weekend. Meanwhile, further inland, sunny skies prevail throughout the middle of the week. High staying in the mid-60s. Will rise to 70 by Friday, and then we'll drop down to 67 by Saturday with more of those clouds rolling on through. As for the mountains, a similar story. Temperatures again steady throughout Wednesday. Will rise slightly Thursday with a high of 46 and then back down to 42 by Saturday. Meanwhile, across the deserts, well, we are tracking highs in the upper 60s Tuesday into Wednesday. Thursday, Friday, highs return to the 70s, and that's going to be the story even throughout the beginning of the weekend. But again, more action is set to make its way on through towards the end of the weekend into the beginning of next week with more heavy rain on the way. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Bree Guy.
There is a new push coming this summer to make sure students from low-income families get the nutrition they need. It includes funding from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. KPBS education reporter MG Perez says eligible parents will have extra money added into their EBT cards.
¿Te gusta el broccoli? No. There are some special lunchtime guests here on the campus of Mission Elementary in the Oceanside Unified School District. They are the Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Department of Agriculture and a California congressman.
Incredibly healthy, very good.
North County U.S. Representative Mike Levin and USDA Deputy Secretary Xochitl Torres Small are here to taste test the school lunches and talk about even more nutritious food that will be available to many of these students when school is out for the summer.
For kids who eat school meals, it's typically the healthiest meal that they have all day. But unfortunately, in the summer, that's not guaranteed.
Thanks to additional funding from the USDA, students from families who qualify for electronic benefits transfer now have more options for getting meals during the 3-month break. Group meal sites will continue at community centers with new grab-and-go or delivery for rural areas. But it's the bonus money being added to EBT cards that will help parents purchase more groceries. The word is being spread in multiple languages to reach as many parents as possible.
Pero es muy importante que se registren porque van a estar recibiendo $40 al mes por niño durante 3 meses.
So this summer, the new EBT program will provide 1 million meals a month here in San Diego County alone. California is one of the first states to take advantage of the funding. Students at Mission Elementary are very aware of the benefits of healthy eating year-round. Does food help you be a better student?
Yeah, because it's healthy and it can make us strong and big.
Parents are also aware of the benefits. Ariel Castro is a mom and a paraeducator for the district, supporting children with special needs.
Some kids might feel aggravated, and a lot of times kids in my classroom aren't able to verbalize exactly that they're hungry, but we can tell some things off.
The EBT boost of $40 per child for the 3 summer months is something 6-year-old Sloan David is grateful will help her education.
Because you can read and do math more, not tireder.
Not tireder?
No.
So stronger? Lesson learned.
Y tenga un buen día en la escuela, okay?
MG Perez, KPBS News.
You just won the Super Bowl. What are you doing next? Well, everyone knows the answer to that, right? You're going to Disney World. But new reports show it's more expensive than ever to get a ticket. Mike Valerio has some tips if going to Disney parks is a part of your post-Super Bowl plans.
It's the ultimate moment in American sports, a Super Bowl victory, and the time-honored tradition, a Disney World or Disneyland victory celebration.
I'm going to Disneyland!
Tickets to the flagship Disney parks have shot up in price. A one-day ticket to Disney World during peak holiday season is up 47% since 2019, far outpacing the rate of inflation, according to Don Munsell, the president of the online theme park guide, Mouse Savers.
It's the magic. Demand for Disney keeps going up.
Munsell says he's tracked Disney park prices for more than 20 years. And a key money-saving hint, theme park tickets for low-demand times, like February or September, have largely escaped recent price hikes.
They've kept the price for 5 years. The price of the cheapest ticket has stayed the same because you can only get that ticket on a really low crowd day.
Another tip from Munsell.
I would say to somebody, don't buy a one-day park hopper at Disney World. That's a bad idea. Like, first off, Disney World is huge. You need many days to go there. It's also just very expensive, much cheaper per day if you buy a multi-day ticket.
He says the same is true for Disneyland and adds reliable third-party ticket vendors often sell Disney tickets for less.
Totally legit. They are authorized by Disney to sell tickets, and they sell them at a discount. They buy them wholesale from Disney. They sell them to you.
In Los Angeles, I'm Mike Valerio.
Well, some good tips there. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.